dear students, I am Madam Mbogo from the Faculty of Education, teaching part of the course OEF 102, History and Sociological Aspects in Education. In the previous presentation, we went through the concept of education and comparative education, where we went through the meaning of comparative education and education and the way the two terms are different according to different scholars' perspectives. We also went through the uses, purpose and aim of comparative education, and also we saw the uses of comparative education in the field of education. We also went through the methodological approaches that are used in studying comparative education, and we also went through the different phases that evolved in the development of comparative education. Now in this presentation, we are going to look at various educational systems in different countries, both developed and underdeveloped nations. Through this presentation, we are going to be able to make analysis of the education systems in the world. To start with, we shall start with the case of developing countries, where we are going to go through some few developing countries and look out on their education systems, on the education structure, the aims of the education, and different processes within education systems of those developing countries. And after going through this presentation, it is where now you will be able to make analysis of your own country's education system, to make relationship and differentiate between your own country's education system and other developed or underdeveloped country's education system. To start with, let us go through the education system of France, and then we shall look on the education system of United Kingdoms, the United States of America, and also of the socialist country of China. As I have said that at the end of this presentation, I expect you to be able to explain various features dominating the education system of those countries, to compare the education system of those countries and your own country, and also now, as I have said that in this presentation, we are going to make analysis of different countries' education system, both developed and underdeveloped countries in the world. However, we are going to look on some few countries which we will take them as our point of consideration in our own country. To start with, we are going to analyze education system of France, United Kingdoms, United States of America, and the socialist country of China. And I expect you to be able, at the end of this presentation, that you'll be able to explain various features dominating the education system of those countries, and also you'll be able now to make comparison and differentiate the education system of your own country and the education system of the countries that you go through. To start this presentation, let us go through the education system in France. Historically, we are told that education system of France initially was under the control of the church. And with this control of the church, only few people, only few individuals were privileged to have access to schools. After that time of church control of education, now the French Revolution of the 18th century made schools for everyone and introduced the state schools. So initially, when you talk of the French education system, you'll see that initially the education system was under the control of the church. And in that case, only few had access to education. After that, the French Revolution of the 18th century make some changes in the education system, where from there education was mandatory to all, was accessible to everyone, where the state schools were introduced. After that, in the 1769 to 1821, the Napoleon disgraded as the great educational revolutionist in France. The French education system is built on the strong belief that the more we change, the more we remain the same. That was in that year. Now, what was the structure of the school system in France? So maybe I have to, you need to stick onto the idea that the education system of France is marked by the revolution, the French Revolution of the 18th century, which made education to be accessible to every individual. Now, what then went on the structure of school system in France? Now, school system in France is divided into 4 stages. There is kindergarten or preschool, that is école maternelle, that is French. I'm sorry for wrong pronunciations. Primary education and secondary education, and also higher education or university education. So the structure of education for anyone who is educated in France, he or she has to pass through kindergarten, primary education, secondary education, and higher education or a university education. Now, how is the kindergarten performed, or preschool and primary school? Let us see how it is done. Kindergarten involves age 2 to age 6. So any child with 2 to 6 age in France has to go for kindergarten. This prepares them for entry into primary school. It is more than just a play school. So within 2 to 6 years of age, a child is went to kindergarten, where it is a preparatory stage to a primary school. The subjects that are taught is reading and writing, numerous and sometimes a foreign language, artistic and creative activities. So you can see that how a kindergarten in France is more advanced maybe when you compare to our education system. A child is taught how to read, how to write, numerous and sometimes a foreign language, artistic and creative activities. Going to primary education, this is from age 6 to 11 years of age. The subjects that are taught are literacy and numerous, with classes in French, arithmetic, but also geography and history, and art subjects. So in primary education in France, we expect a child to be able to read, write, and count, literacy and numerous, with classes in French, and geography, history, and arts. We can say the social sciences subjects. Also, they insist on a foreign language and usually English. So English to them is a foreign language. The classes went on for 28 hours per week. That is education, primary education in France. The secondary education and higher education, secondary education is in 2 stages. The first stage went on for 4 years. Now, this is from age 11 to age 55. 15 years, we expect a child to be in the first phase of the secondary education in France. Then, the second phase of secondary education is age 15 to age 18. This is called a further secondary education. So, education in France comprises of 7 years with 2 phases. The first phase, where a child went for the first phase at the age of 11 to 15, and the second phase, which is a further secondary education, a child went there at the age of 15 to 18. Now, after completion of the secondary education, a child has to pass his secondary education examinations, and he or she went to higher education. Now, the higher education or university education in France is organized in 3 levels, which correspond to those of other European countries. So, most of the European countries have 3 levels or grades in the higher education, in the university education. In the higher education, there is bachelor, or what they say licensed professional. There is also a master and a doctoral degree, doctorate. That is the higher education in France. Now, let us look on how they administer and finance the education in France. The structure of education system in France is highly centralized, and therefore it is controlled by the Ministry of the Nation. So the appointed ministry is fully eligible to control, to administer the education system in the France. So no individual institution or no individual governing board is expected to administer or control and organize the education, because the education is under the control of the government. That's why we're saying it is highly centralized. The Minister for National Education is one of the highest ranking officials in the cabinet. The teachers, lecturers, professors, and others are all state civil servants. So that is on the administration. About financing of education, this is mainly done by the government. So no individual person pays anything on education. Only the government pays and finances the education to its personnel. The remaining comes from school fees paid by the student and the private sources. That is how education is administered and financed in the education in France. So, after looking on that presentation, you can now you can now make analysis of how education in France is controlled, how it is organized, and how it is financed. So you have seen that the education is divided into four stages. There is kindergarten, there is primary education, there is secondary and higher education in France. The control is under the control of the government. It is highly centralized. The finance is somehow done by the government, but at the same time, the school fees may be paid by the students, and the private sources help in the financing of education in France. Now let us look on the educational practice in the United Kingdom. The development of education in the United Kingdom can be traced to the what we call Hurdle Report of 1926 and the Spence Report of 1938. However, the Education Act of 1902 gave the following 3 levels of education in the United Kingdom. So, one can say that education in the United Kingdom, there is no education in the United Kingdom without speaking its development or its origin from the Hurdle Report of 1926 and the Spence Report of 1938. And also the Act, the Education Act of 1902, which gave the following levels of education. Another thing that marks the development of the education practice in the United Kingdom is that within the same country, within the same area, each country within the United Kingdom have a separate education system and a separate government. So each government within the United Kingdom control or administer its own education system. So you can see there are some differences within United Kingdom's countries' education system. Now, what is the structure, the general structure of school system in Britain? This involves 5 stages of education: the nursery or early years, the primary education, secondary education, further education, and the higher education. So when you see the structure of education in the Britain, you can see there a minor difference when compared to the previous presentation in the education of France. Now here there's an addition of what is called a further education compared to France, where there is no further education. Now, what about the nursery education and primary education in Britain? A nursery school is for children aged 3 to 5 years and serves as a temporary home for the children whose parents are working. So, any parent in Britain who is busy with work, who has no time for child rearing, he or she takes a child to what is called a nursery school. There it is a temporary home for these children. Now, primary education, compulsory. This is compulsory for all children between the age of 5 and 11, and it is publicly and privately administered. All public primary schools are administered by the local education authority. The subjects that are taught in primary education here is history, geography, and nature study, crafts, arts and physical education, French, and also religious education. Extra school activities are also taught, like swimming, music, and any other interested games are also taught in primary education. The secondary education starts at the age of 11 years. Subjects such as music, mathematics, science, English, social sciences are taught in secondary education. Now, 4 types of secondary education are developing in this stage of learning. There is modern schools, secondary grammar schools, technical high school, and comprehensive schools. So you can see that there are some branches of secondary education in Britain. There are those schools that are called secondary modern schools, there are secondary grammar schools, technical high schools, and comprehensive schools. In these four categories, there are also differences in the subjects that are taught. For example, in secondary grammar, the grammatical ideas and grammatical principles are mostly taught in these kinds of school. Technical education, they concentrate on technical issues. Further education involves institutions provided for young persons for the purpose of assisting them to develop their various aptitudes and also to train them to become responsible adults in their life. So unlike secondary education, where they are subject for content knowledge, in further education, it is more of the technical. It is more of technical, where through this kind of education, learners are trained to acquire various technical skills which will help them to become individual and independent learners in the society. There is also teacher education, which is a professional training designed for teachers of all categories. Now, in higher education in the United Kingdom, higher education is offered by universities and non-university institutions, like colleges, institutes, schools, and academies, and provide both research-oriented and higher professional education. So in higher education in the United Kingdom, we expect learners in this kind of institutions to acquire both research-oriented and higher professional educations. So for a person to become research skilled and higher profession, he or she has to go through the higher education institutions. These institutions offers both degree programs degree programs, the bachelor's, master's, and doctoral degrees. And also there are non-degree programs that lead to vocational qualifications such as certificates and diploma. Now, how is education administered and funded in the United Kingdom? All levels except higher institutions are controlled by the ministry through the decentralized system. So the education is more decentralized. However, the higher institutions are controlled by the Ministry of Education. So there is this specific organ, the Ministry of Education, which controls all the principles, all the processes and procedures that are done by private institutions in order to administer and control the education system. The financing of education, money is always voted for the Ministry of Education from the national revenue by the Parliament. So the national revenue is voted by the Ministry of Education in the Parliament. The Ministry of Education will also disburse part of the money in form of grants to local educational authorities. So all the revenue have to be passed through the Parliament, where through budgeting, when the budget is clear, then the money is transferred into the Ministry of Education for disbursement into the educational institutions. So no institution is able or have access to the money only when it is budgeted and passed over by the Parliament. It is when the private institutions and any institutions have access to use the money. That is the education system in Britain. And now, what about the education in the United States of America? The most important thing you need to note here is that the education system in the United States is highly decentralized. The local authorities are in charge of the elementary, primary, and secondary education. Child education is compulsory. So the local authorities, the institutions, the private sectors have a control over the education system, have access to control, to plan, to manage, to administer the education system in the United States of America. That's why it is highly decentralized. And the child education is compulsory to any child. The structure of education involves 4 stages: the early childhood education, the elementary education, the secondary education, and tertiary education. The early childhood education covers the age around 3 to 5 years, and the curriculum bears language literacy, physical, emotional, and social development. Introduction to basic concepts in the areas of mathematics, science, and social studies, music, movement, and art is also part of the curriculum in the United States of America. The elementary education begins at the age of 6, and it is compulsory and free of charge in public schools. So in the United States, there are public schools and there are also private schools. Education for those who attend the public schools is free of charge. No one is paying anything for education at elementary education in the United States. The secondary education is offered by both public and private schools, as I have said. It is broken down into 2 distinct levels: the middle or junior high school and high school. So secondary school is divided into 2. There are middle or junior high school and high school. The middle school education involves 2 years, grade 7 and 8, and serves students who are 12 to 14 years. Higher education, high school, involves grade 9 to 12 for students ages 14 to 18. Subjects taught are English, mathematics, general science, health, physical education, foreign language, and social sciences. The higher education and administration funding process, post-secondary education, is broadly divided into 2 different sectors. There is post-secondary vocational education and training and higher education. Education is mainly decentralized, being provided by the public sector. So the public sector are fully engaged in the education system of the in higher education in the United States. So that is about the education system in the United States of America. The most important thing you have to note is that it is highly decentralized, meaning that other private sectors, private individuals, and private institutions have ability to control, to administer, to monitor, and to run the education system in the United States of America. And that's why in this education system, there are public schools and private schools. So the private schools are managed by the private sectors, and the public schools are managed and controlled by the government sectors. So all these private and public institutions are working together for the aim of bringing up society, a well-educated society of the United States of America. Let's go quickly onto the education system of the China as one of the socialist countries. As it is true of most Western countries, the Chinese education system consists of 5 tiers. There is the kindergarten, the primary school, junior middle schools, the senior middle school, and post-secondary or college or university education. So you can see it is mostly alike the other developed countries we have seen. There is the kindergarten, the primary school, the senior middle school, and the post-secondary or college education. What is the structure of the education in China? As we have said, the primary education subject involves Chinese, so any primary education child in China has to learn the Chinese. There is mathematics, there is history, geography, and science. There is also a certain level of elementary, political, and moral education, including the physical education in the primary education. The junior middle school involves a continuation of the primary system. So after a child has finished the primary education, he or she has to went through the junior middle school. This involves a continuation. So this is a continuation of the primary education. The students study the same core subjects as those that were studied in the primary education. Students elect whether to follow science or humanities in the senior middle school. So here a student has access to or to opt to make option which area of study, which specialization he, she, or she wants to study. So he can choose either science or humanities according to his or her ability, her interest, and so on. Again, sports and political education are part of the curriculum in the senior middle school. The higher education students wish to undertake, they must first do the entrance exam. So a person to enter into higher education in China, he or she has to pass the entrance examination. The funding and administration, tuition is free during the 9-year compulsory part of education. So in the compulsory part of education, a child is paid nothing. There is free of charge. The education is paid by the government finances the education at that kind of that period of studies. However, students are required to pay for the textbooks and other items in other levels of education. So as one goes to next stages of education, to the secondary education in higher levels, a student has to pay for the textbooks and other items, unlike in the primary school. So we have gone through the education system of the developing countries. We look on the education system of France. We look on the education system of the United Kingdom, the United States of America, and also on the education system of China. It is my hope that you are now able to analyze, or at least to elaborate, how the structure of the education system of these developing countries, the funding, the implementation, and also the control and management of the education system of all those 4 developing countries. Now let us go and see the education system of some developing countries. Among them, let us go through the education system of Tanzania. And now through this analysis of education system of developing countries and developing countries, it is my hope that you are going to develop a knowledge and a skill of making a thorough analysis of how this education, of these different education system are run. And therefore, after that, you'll be able also to see the weaknesses, the strengths of these 2 kinds of education systems of the developing and developing countries, in order now to be able to either make some changes in your own country's education system, to borrow some ideas, to evaluate the weaknesses and the strengths of the education system of your own country. Now let us look on the education system of Tanzania. Now Tanzania is among the developing countries, and it is comprised of both formal education system and informal education system. The structure is based on the 2, 7, 4, 2, up to 3 and plus education system. 2 years of kindergarten, 7 years of primary education, 4 years of 3 to 4 years of higher learning institution. In the Tanzanian education system, we can notice a unique feature in the education system. This is the bilingual policy, which requires children to learn both Kiswahili and English. Education system of Tanzania is controlled by, is decentralized. There is public and private schools. So a parent is able or have access to either choose, have a decision, can make a decision of choosing either to take his or her child to a private or to a public school according to his will and interest. So a unique feature, as I've said, it is a bilingual policy. Bilingual is a use of 2 languages, both Kiswahili and English. Kiswahili is the medium of instruction at primary education level, and especially in the public primary schools. It is taught as a compulsory subject at secondary education and is optional in tertiary education. Coming to English, English is taught as a compulsory subject in primary education. So all primary education, whether public or private, has to learn English as a subject, English language as a subject. However, it is different in these 2 types of schools. In public schools, English is taught from when a child is at standard 3. So every child, when entered into standard 3, he starts learning English as a language. as a foreign language subject. But to private schools, English is a language of instruction, is a medium of instruction to public primary schools in Tanzania. So it is taught right from the beginning of the standard 1, a child is learning English as a subject, but also it is used as a medium of instruction. In secondary education, English is used as a medium of instruction in both schools, whether private or public schools, secondary schools. It is also taught as one among the subjects in secondary education. So that is the characteristics of the way education in Tanzania is carried out. So first you need to know the structure, the 2-7-4 structure, but also you need to concentrate on the language of instruction, which differs between the public and primary, the public and private schools in Tanzania education system. The financing of education is done by the government, especially in public primary schools and public secondary schools. The education is financed by the government. Only some few things that parents are supposed to pay. Only few things a parent has to pay. So the government finances almost all things in public primary schools and secondary schools in Tanzania. In higher education, the government also pays something, but there are also some other bodies like loan boards, higher education loan boards, where the learners or the students are supposed to borrowing money for studying in the higher education in Tanzania. In Kenya, the structure of education involves an 84-4 format with 8 years of primary school, 4 years of secondary, and 4 years of university education. There is a pre-primary school at the year 3 years of it, when a child is about 3 years. There is primary education at 8 years, secondary education 4 years, and tertiary education 4 years. Funding and resources. The funding of public university in Kenya is currently based on unit cost. The management of education, the Ministry of Education, is responsible for the controlling and providing education to its citizens. So the education is under the Ministry of Education, like in Tanzania, where the Ministry of Education controls all the system, the practices of education. Although there are private and private sectors, but they are under the control of this body, the Ministry of Education. Now, my dear students, after we have gone through the education system of some few developed countries and few developing countries, I'm sure you're now able to make analysis, to go through the education system of your own country, to go through the education system of other developed countries and developing countries. And from there, you will be able to analyze the education system of one of the developed countries and point out some basic educational ideas, like the structure, how you have seen the structure, the administration, the organization, the control, the financing, and relate or differentiate those educational entities to your own country's education system. I thank you very much for listening and have a good time.